On January 20th, the day Joe Biden took the oath of office, America set a record for the highest number of Wuhan virus deaths in a day. On January 22nd, Washington, D.C. reopened indoor dining. On the 23rd, so did Chicago. And on the 25th, California removed its stay-at-home order.
We are anticipating still more decline in hospitalizations and more declines in ICUs, and that's why we're lifting that stay-at-home order effective immediately today.
Don't you all find this somewhat odd? Because California is experiencing twice the amount of daily deaths than it did during the summer months. You see, liberal governors and mayors have been telling us how dangerous the virus is. We must lock down. But if that's true, why is it really safe to open now? Why is it more safe to open now when we are still setting death toll records? The answer is because it was never about safety, and it was all about politics. The Democrats are ruining lives over politics, and they're taking their cues from Joe Biden. He talks about women's rights, for example, yet he signs an executive order allowing men to compete against women in sports. In one stroke of the pen, he destroyed women's sports for at least 4 years. For Joe Biden and the left, their policies are all about pandering. In this case, to the trans community, a group of people, by the way, that make up about 0.4% of the population, according to a study by UCLA. So Biden rails against white supremacy as well, and so-called violent white nationalists. But I want you to take a close look at crime in America. The murder rate skyrocketed 37% in 2020 nationwide. Most of the victims were people of color killed by people of color. Did you know 55 children were murdered in Chicago in 2020? Nearly all of them minorities, all while the Democrats waged war on cops. Thanks to left-wing nonsensical so-called political correctness, more pandering here. So police stops and interactions with the community plummeted in nearly every major city. In Minneapolis, they fell by 50%. And what happened? Violent crime in that city is up 62%. Yet Joe Biden and his radical cop-hating henchmen rail against racist police and racist conservatives that support them. But they never talk about the real problem facing American inner cities: minority on minority crime. People are dying because Democrat politicians led by Joe Biden pander to the mob. And I haven't even mentioned the crimes committed by Antifa and Black Lives Matter rioters. And sadly, neither does the Biden administration.
There was some discussion earlier about the January 6th rioters being reviewed by the DNI as domestic violent extremists. Are the rioters in Portland also being viewed through the same lens?
All violence happening around the country will be reviewed as a part of the tasking that was done by the national security team, but I don't have anything to preview on it.
All right, see, she doesn't want to talk about it. They don't want to preview anything about it. None of what Joe Biden is doing right now makes sense. It really doesn't. And let me be clear, this is not just a disagreement on policies that I have with him. He's acting negligent. He's sacrificing American greatness to make a political point. Joe Biden wants to stop travel, by the way, from Europe to save us from the China virus. But he's opening up travel for illegals to flood our southern borders with no regard for virus implications there. So you see, it's all for show, not safety. He can say he's restricting travel from Europe, where testing is actually being done, but then he looks the other way because politically, to appease the radicals, he needs to let illegals in from the South, where no testing is being done. Folks, it makes no sense unless all you are doing is pandering again. Take fossil fuels. Joe Biden is waging war on them, killing jobs, state economies, and our energy independence. Why? Because he panders to radical environmentalists.
In my view, we've already waited too long to deal with this climate crisis. That's why I'm signing today an executive order to supercharge our administration's ambitious plan to confront the existential threat of climate change. It is an existential threat.
All right, well, if it's such an existential threat, as he said today, then don't kill the Keystone Pipeline in favor of freight trains moving oil across our country. How is that environmentally sound decision? Trains burn more fuel and spew more emissions into the air than an underground pipeline ever would. What's frightening is all of these moves are mostly executive orders, as you know by now. With Joe Biden's decision-making, it's all backwards, it's dangerous, and it will hurt America.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.